welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. We are delighted for you joining us today for our official second Biosphere Bites seminar. My name is Kelly Cirillo, and I'm the coordinator for the U.S. Biosphere Network, also co-chair of the Champlain Adirondack Network. So today, as you'll see, we have two amazing presenters lined up for our second Biosphere Bites. Duncan Berry and Jasper Winkler from the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaborative in Oregon are here today to talk about bioculturalism and fostering a deeper connection with the living planet. So just a reminder, this seminar is a part of our bi-weekly Biosphere Bites seminar series. It's designed to bring together biosphere reserves, not only from the US, but also from the World Network of Biosphere Reserves to share ideas, projects, and resources around sustainable development. So again, we're delighted that you're joining us. And just for future reference, if you are not able to join some of the Biosphere Bites live, you're invited to actually access our USBN YouTube channel. I will drop that link in the chat so you have it for later. All the Biosphere Bites are recorded and put to our YouTube channel. So some basic Zoom housekeeping things. So we just ask that you keep yourself on mute during the presentation to reduce background noise. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, we invite you to put them in the chat. We will get to them during the Q&A. So the format of the presentation, it's going to be 20 minutes, and then we're going to allocate 10 minutes at the end for a short Q&A. So I'd like to also invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat, to put your name and potentially where you're signing in from, what biosphere region you're signing in from, because it looks like we have a great range of people from all over, and I actually see one of our Canadian friends joining as well today too. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to present our second Biosphere Bites speakers on their talk on bioculturalism. So I'm not going to go very long in terms of the bios because I want to give Duncan and Jasper plenty of time to discuss their Biosphere Bite. But Duncan is the co-director of the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaborative on Oregon's Central Coast. He's also nationally renowned. And Duncan, I'm going to ask for your assistance with pronouncing this. I believe it's Gyotaku. Am I saying that relatively?
Yeah, Gyotaku.
Gyotaku, thank you. He's also a nature printing artist. For 30 years, Duncan founded and led values-based businesses in diverse fields, including graphic design, fashion, and sustainable seafood. Jasper Winkler is our second presenter today. He's a master's student at the University of Salamanca in Spain. And he's currently studying international relations, majoring in migration, environment, and climate change. Jasper has graduated with a Bachelor of Global Studies at the University of Auckland and has interned at New Zealand Center for Global Studies. He's also spent 3 months with the Cascade Head Biosphere Collective and is hoping to go back there sometime soon. So with that, welcome Duncan and Jasper. We're delighted that you're joining us today for the second Biosphere Bite, and I will turn it over to you to share the screen and get started with your presentation.
Thanks so much, Katie. Yeah, so I'm coming live from a very wet biosphere region out at Cascade Head on Oregon's beautiful Central Coast. And Jasper?
Yes, thank you very much, Kelly. I am coming in live from Berlin, Germany right now, about 5 hours ahead of you guys. And over the next 20 minutes, we're going to take you on a journey through the southern and northern hemisphere and show how we started out with one goal in mind, and as it often is the case, ended up in a very, very different place. And I can say, and I think we both can say, Duncan, you and I, in a much better place now. So yeah, so these experiences that we've sort of gathered over the last couple of months and even a year almost now, evolved into a way of thinking and methodology that we have coined a term for bioculturalism. You can go to the 5th slide there, Duncan.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Hold on.
Yeah, share the screen first.
So I think we're going to jump back just for a moment, Jasper, and introduce folks where we're coming from just very quickly. Again, welcome to Bioculturalism, and you're taking a look at where we're coming from, which is the Salmon River Estuary, where Jasper and I spent almost 4 months together coming up with what you're about to see. So we've been waiting almost a year to share this with you all. This is Oregon's only biosphere reserve and one of, or a region. It's one of the 28 in the United States. And we have both a land and sea connection through our marine reserve. Our vision is to be as beautiful and functional in our humanness as this extraordinary place, which is a high bar. It's a very beautiful spot we inhabit here. And to foster generations of engaged stewards where nature has rights, art illuminates science, and research drives climate action. We have 3 pillars, and I won't go into them too deeply, but it's 21st century education, basically K through 8 in the field. We do climate research, solutions, and actions. And then we have a wide range of community engagement events. We're really very much a bottom-up organization here. So,
yeah, so you can see I was just talking about bioculturalism. And what we're going to share here with you is meant to be the same as what we would do with our volunteers at the Biosphere. So I'm just going to give you a, Duncan, if you want to go to the 6th slide.
sorry.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, here I'm going to explain actually what bioculture means because we're going to be using this term a lot. So it is a term that we have sympathized with over the past months, as it sort of recognizes the link between nature and humans. So basically what we're saying is that the rights of people and nature are inextricably linked, and it recognizes the profound and the intrinsic connection that exists between humans and their natural environment. And it can also be seen as something that creates sort of an harmonious nexus between both humans and nature, and that both cannot be understood in isolation as they are intertwined. And yeah, so one very important aspect of bioculturalism is that it's not just a conceptual term, but it has to be applied. And yeah, Duncan, you can go to the next slide and keep going.
So is the PowerPoint full, or are you seeing my?
No, you need to do the whole PowerPoint. We can see your whole desktop right now.
So to go back to the beginning, gosh darn it, excuse me. To go back to the beginning, the way this started was we came in contact through one of the people on the call today, and a book that we read on rights of nature. And in that, we got exposed to really the beginning of the rights of nature movement, which was back in the 70s, with a book by, actually it was a law article by Christopher Stone called "Should Trees Have Standing?" And this really kicked off a wide conversation over the next 4 or 5 years within the burgeoning sort of the start of the environmental movement. And here's a definition of rights of nature, which is sort of an analog to what Jasper just shared with our definition of bioculturalism.
Yeah, so rights of nature, or just short RON, as it's been used nowadays, is a contemporary ecological concept that touches on specific elements from bioculturalism, but is, like Duncan just said, more like an analog from my earlier description. So one important aspect is that it has been used as a legal framework to protect nature and from anthropogenic actions that harm the environment. But it's like the term already says, it deals about the rights and therefore has a legal connotation to it. And it's intimately connected with the concept of legal personhood that subjectifies non-human entities. Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, Duncan. Yeah, so in the 50 years past, rights of nature has grown into a worldwide movement in over 50 countries and 350 laws in place, with the US actually being one of the world leaders. And interestingly enough, this map was created by the UN's own Harmony with Nature program. So if you're intrigued by this idea, and some really great organizations out there that are doing really intensive work on the ground, and then also on the next slide, a couple of books that you can see here. And yes, now Duncan, you can talk about one of our close friends and colleagues that's actually here today as well, Cameron.
So the book to the far right, we actually have the author of this book, and she is really the portal and the gateway by which we were able to contact a minister, Finlayson, in Aotearoa, and arrange to meet with the Maori leadership. So Cameron, glad you're here today, and thank you. So with that, we in almost exactly a year ago, in fact, we were with the Maori this day a year ago. We headed to Aotearoa. Many of you know it as New Zealand. And we want to wish you kia ora, which is the hangi or traditional greeting where you're breathing in each other's essence, much different than our handshake.
Yeah, so just for a quick historical context about Aotearoa, a place that also has a lot of meaning to me. Just talking about what our experience was, you kind of have to understand the historical context of the Maoris, who are the indigenous people of New Zealand. So I'm just going to give you a really quick context about the treaty. So the Maoris in 1840 signed a landmark constitutional treaty in Waitangi, which is a city in the North Island, with the invading British Crown to become subjects of Queen Victoria in exchange for protection and to maintain what at least they believed to be sovereignty over the lands, or so they thought. And this is actually the country's founding document with other specific legislations, but the Treaty of Waitangi is, what their constitution is basically. And then 15 years ago, the Prime Minister of Aotearoa, the National Party was in charge back then, so is today, handpicked his Attorney General of the country, Christopher Finlayson, actually one of my friends and colleagues as well, to be the head of the Waitangi Treaty reparations, and they challenged him to settle claims regarding genocide, land appropriations, and etc. with as many Maori, which means tribe in Te Reo Maori, as possible. And this became one of the major priorities of the government to deal with the dark past openly. And he wrote a book, as you can see here. It's called He Kupu Torangi. And this should be actually read all over the country because it's really, really useful. And I'm just going to post it in the chat really quick, the link, so if you want to check it out. And yeah, so one of his remarkable achievement was that Mr. Finlayson and the Maori leadership were able to achieve settlements with about 80% of the Maori iwis on the North and South Island over the past decade or so. And these have consisted of apologies, which were actually written by the Maoris themselves, monetary settlements, and in many cases, the return of land, which was really crucial for the Maori people. While that doesn't necessarily make up for the serious destructions of Maori culture and homelands over the past 150 years, they are definitely an opportunity to move on into a new chapter for Maori and Aotearoa future.
So Minister Finlayson was kind enough to introduce us to Maori leadership, and specifically the Tūhoe people, who are really renowned as some of the fiercest and most independent of the Maori peoples. And they have an incredibly beautiful homeland. This is a photo of Te Uruera, which was made by the Crown into a national park, and their homelands were seized. So we traveled almost 9 hours by rough road to meet with their chairman and CEO and spend 3 days with they and their families at the lake. And on the way, I spoke with Kirsty Luke, who's the Tūhoe CEO, and these are the words that she shared with me. Hearing these were really the sort of opening act in my resultant shift in thinking. I went, species of concern. My 69 years of believing it was all out there and needs us to save it or conserve it or manage it. Hearing this, I really realized that it was actually about looking inside my own human relationship with the natural world. As the Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh says, the way out is in. And so, yeah, so here you see Tamati Kruger.
Yep, so you can see Tamati Kruger, visionary chairman of the Tūhoe, and Christy Luke, the CEO. They are the ones who negotiated a landmark reparation settlement for their people. And this is specifically for the Te Uruera Park, which is located in the North Island and is equivalent to the Yosemite Park for New Zealand, at least. And interestingly enough, the Rights of Nature framework laid down in specific legislation provided personhood for the entire park. So this was sort of a way to break negotiation standoff between parliamentary conservatives and progressives to reach an agreement. And I mean, personhood basically means that the entire park owns itself, with the Tūhoe, so the indigenous people are the voice of the park. They are meant to be the legal guardians for the park.
Quite an idea that it owns itself.
Yeah.
So the meeting with the Tūhoe chairman, Tamati, was a watershed experience really for me personally and for Melanie. We met for what's called a karero, or a talk, but one focused on deeper, more important matters. And in that 90 minutes, these are some of the words that he shared with me, but it's the last line is one that really made me smile when he said it, and once again sort of challenged my use of language and how I thought about wild places. Much of what we discussed that day, they handed me this copy of the Te Kawa Aotearoa, which is basically their protocol. That's the Te Kawa's protocol and guide. And it not only guides their own growth as a people, but also their relationship with the Crown and visitors to the park. And we're going to drop a link in here, but it's an extraordinary document that I'd encourage you to read. It relates directly to the MAB program and its goal of harmonizing man with the rest of nature. So here's a key seed thought paraphrased from our conversation with Tamati. He basically said, Duncan, you were not born with rights. You were born with relational responsibilities. Another sort of something that's really resonated for a long time afterwards with me. And we were adopted by Tamati's family. This is his 7-year-old granddaughter, his daughter, and his son-in-law, who helped run Te Urevera operationally. And we spent a couple of days together printing all the different endemic plants of the forest around us. Karakia is his daughter, which means prayer. And after a long walk to a waterfall one morning, she asked me, how did it go? And I said, it was just amazing. And she said, she really enjoyed your footsteps. And for me, that was like, wow, place as sentient, alive being. So from there, we said farewells to the Tuhoi, and we returned over the mountains and spent time in the geothermal belt. And we traveled to this watershed, which is the Whanganui River Basin, which is the second place of personhood. And we met again with leadership there, the chairman and the executive director of the Haua Iwi. And we heard of their monumental task of working with hundreds of thousands of acres and diverse interests of stakeholders from there's Canadian timber companies and fishermen. It's just a wide range of stakeholders. And this is something I thought was really seminal that Graham Bell said is that which unites us is this saying, we always ask ourselves, is what we're working on going to benefit the health and well-being of the river? So with that, after 34 days, we had several more meetings with ministers and the Maoris, and we drove about 800 kilometers on the wrong side of the road. We returned to the US, back to the biosphere. And we returned with really a firm resolve to figure out a way to have Jasper come join us in our work at the Cascade Head Biosphere Collaborative, and also to plant the seeds of what's been shared with us by Aotearoa back in our own communities to see if they would sprout, which brings us to this moment together.
Yeah, so luckily I met Melanie and Duncan in Auckland and was able to join the Cascade Head Biosphere. So in processing everything we had experienced, one of the immediate and keys ahas when I was in Oregon was that using the term nature rise was polarizing for many of the people. We needed to engage and enroll our community, and that legal action was a last resort when other ways of relating and communicating had broken down or failed. And I think there was something that Cliff McReady expressed. He'd said, let's not give them another reason not to embrace biosphere regions, which is, yeah, quite spot on. So what was emerging for us was a dynamic sort of mutualism that human rights and nature rights are the same, and that a violation and or abuse of one affects the other. When seen in this way, it appeals to those humans that we were worried about being second to nature rights, more of and we want to create more of a we are all in this together approach. So this small insight is an interesting sort of global look at this linked fate and what happens to us and as a species when our environment is harmed and the other way around. So we never really wanted to neglect the idea of any sort of legal frameworks because they can be helpful, but the intention is intrinsically a different one.
And so Jasper and I spent many days together walking the landscape, on the water, on the land. And what we found was really important is what is it that we have come to believe at this juncture in our lives after the experience in Aotearoa for both of us. And so bear with us. There's some word walls in here, but just pretend you're reading a book with us. And there are four of these that really seem to resonate. And before we went to work on what we really wanted to do in terms of embedding some of these learnings in our own biosphere, we really focused on what was sort of the bedrock of our beliefs.
Yeah, so we then became really interested in creating an analog to the Maori's Te Kawa, which is so the Tuhoi people, it's a protocol document which they have created in order to provide a guide for reconnecting tribal members to their ancestral lands and for building their future. Reconnecting is one of the main themes, and also rebuilding and building relationships with things we are interested in doing with our own community in the Cascade Head Biosphere. So I'm just going to put that in the chat so you can look it up. And so the first step of the process evolved as an internal one that then sequentially grew into an external one through a process of both learning and unlearning. So start inside and then you move outside. Yeah, so there was no better place to start than with ourselves. And so what we did, we created a useful biocultural toolbox with our goal was for community-wide use, but then we realized it has to start with one person at a time. So we actually began with our own biosphere board, sort of the Dr. Heal Thyself ideology, and then moved to out into our community from there. So yeah, Duncan, you can talk a little bit about the cultural process, the
Yeah, I
biocultural.
think we're getting close to our time here, so I'm going to speed through these. But basically, this portal process, we wanted to meet people as they were. This wasn't trying to convince people to be. This was not a specific and prescriptive process. It was more learning a lot about the people that we're interacting with in our own community. It's also we joke it's a little bit like golf. Keep a light grip during this process. And to kick it off, I think, were you going to do this one, Jasper?
Yeah, I can do this. So to kick things off, we started with 3 steps to engage the participants and deepen their connection. The first one was made up of 4 questions that look at their own lives, belief, and legacy with curiosity, and also learning from the collaborative and connecting to nature and their physical world, and then becoming mindful of the habits and views that no longer serve us, that have been hidden inside our language and views. So to get grounded, we ask 4 questions that look deeply at the participants' own lives, values, and legacies. Those are the questions. I'm not going to read them out because we don't have enough time. So yeah, Duncan.
So that was the internal process, and there's a lot of this hidden. This is sort of an iceberg here, but we're just giving you a high-level snapshot. From that whole process could take a day, it could take a week, it could take a month. But then moving from that internal process, we go to the external, which is to apply what you've just learned and unlearned. And that's a phrase that the Maori use a lot. Their people are in the midst of learning and unlearning what they've been through the last 150 years, which I think is appropriate for us as well in this 21st century. And one of the key pieces of this is cultivating place awareness of where you live and what you're dependent on in your own watersheds. And we ask these sort of 4 seminal questions about how the external world and place has shaped you, who you are today, by asking these 4 questions. And that last one is a big one.
Yep. So we've also seen the parallels with UNESCO, as they have expressed here. The ambition is to reconcile 100% of humans with the rest of nature. And this is also one of our goals. So if you go to the next slide, part of the process is after moving through the internal and external phase of the portal, or what we call the portal, the participant can then decide how they want to activate and engage that into their own lives. And especially at the Cascade Head Biosphere region, we offer them a menu of different ways to do so, knowing much more about what motivates them and now. So yeah.
Yeah, and here's just an essential closing thought. We've come to realize that we're not here to save the world, and it's not out there, rather that the challenges and opportunities we are facing are the ones inside each of us as that species of concern as humans. So we believe that transforming our humanistic worldview and actions is the critical factor to changing the current trajectory of our species on the planet. And I think we're in our question and answer phase now. So we just threw out a little thought starter here, but please either hold forth on this one or ask us any other questions. And thank you all for taking this journey with us.
Yes, thank you very much for everyone. Also for Kelly for being the head here.
Host with the most. Yeah.
I'd like to encourage the audience. Well, first, thank you, Jasper and Duncan, for that incredible thought-provoking presentation. It gave us a lot to think about and reflect on when we think about our connection to nature. So thank you for that framing and for sharing your experience. It was really insightful. So I do want to give a chance for others in the audience. You can either raise your hand, you could take yourself off of mute, or drop it in the chat, and we're happy to field any questions or comments that you might have, either based on the question that's on the screen or for your own separate questions. So give others a chance to weigh in. Kate, please.
It was a great presentation, and I'm wondering, with this kind of process that you've gone through, is this to set out kind of the core foundational principle of how the biosphere region operates, or is it looking at a specific kind of project approach? And I ask because, that in Canada, we've got 19, stemming from 1978 to 2021, and they're all at different stages. And I'm wondering kind of what was the impetus, and I joined a little bit late, so you may have covered this, but what was the impetus for you going on this journey to start with?
Yeah, I think as Jasper said in the beginning, it was not what we thought it was, Kate. We thought it was about rights of nature, and I think that has morphed into something much deeper for us. And I would say it is very resonant both with the MAB program, but also with our own vision statement, which we showed in the beginning, that in many ways we are taking the region itself, the water and the land here, as our lead, as our teacher, and striving to be as beautiful and functional as it is in our humanness. And so I would say this is both a tool that we use on ourselves internally, but also with our volunteers and our partners. And then sort of in that onion effect, our goal over time, once it's still in a draft form, but we would employ it with our entire community, would be our goal over time.
That's great. Thanks for the question, Kate. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So we have about 2 minutes for one potential last question or comment, and then we'll do a quick wrap up because we are a hard stop at 30 minutes. So any other last thoughts or questions before we close out?
I'll just say, Elizabeth Murray from California, I was so touched, and I took pictures so I could read them and really dive in more. And I love seeing your nature printing that you were doing with the Maori family, and that intimacy to get really close to those species through the nature printing. And then the immersion, it sounds like it's really being immersed so that you feel a part of the family of the natural world, not a governing over. There's so much to take in and digest. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, and we'll also forward on a link. We're happy to transfer this entire PowerPoint to anyone that would like to use it within their own biosphere or take a look at it. There was a lot to chew through in a very short period of time. So thanks for your patience with that.
That's great. And I can certainly share that in the follow-up email too. So thank you again, Duncan and Jasper, for the wonderful presentation and to celebrate our second Biosphere Bites seminar. So I do want to invite everyone to our next Biosphere Bites in 2 weeks. It's using the same Zoom link. Kate Potter, who you just heard from, the Executive Director of the Canadian Biosphere Reserve Association, is going to be joining us to tell us about some of the current projects, priorities, and the path forward for their network. So we're honored to have Kate join us as well. So again, that's going to be on Wednesday, April 12th, same time, 12 o'clock Eastern. And we hope you can join us. So thank you again, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Take great care.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you all.
wonderful. Really great.
Okay.